Hey everybody, welcome back to the weekly podcast. My name is Patrick Tan, General Counsel for ChatArgos. Hello to all you Argonauts out there. With me every week, as usual, is Jonathan Reiter, CEO and Chief Data Scientist. Thank you for taking the time out of your precious schedules to join us. Now, you may be asking, and some of you have been might be wondering, why are we not in the same place where we're filming this? That's because I'm down with a really, really bad flu, and so as not to infect my boss, I'm actually broadcasting to you from my home studio. Jonathan's in the office, of course. And thank you, whoever it was that left that comment last week. You did notice that we switched sides. We like to mix things up every now and then when we record the podcast. So thanks for watching. But right, so what do we have for you guys this week? Because you're not here to listen to us banter. You're here for the good stuff, right? This week we've got three things to talk to you guys about. We're going to talk to you about John's stablecoin paper that he's just submitted and that's been accepted by the IEEE. For now, for those of you non-nerds who don't know what that is, that's actually a big deal. IEEE means like it's 3 times the E as opposed to just IE. So like you're like 3 times as like brilliant as everybody else. You know, like if you're an academic, this is a big deal.
It's a standard normal engineering journal. It's not.
That's the one.
But it's
all right.
It's a proper academic journal. It's not a.
It's like the Heisman Trophy for nerds, right? So
I mean, it's not a self-published preprint on some whatever random server.
It's not a blog spot. So basically, like a whole bunch of other academics have read this guy, and then they're like, "Whoa, wait, hang on, these guys know their shit." So essentially, like,
I mean, formally speaking, it means that they read it and they think that it has something useful to say and is not wrong. that's
so basically not Twitter, right? So.
It is not censorship resistant. It is a censored platform, right? To be clear,
there you go. Point. So John, tell us a little bit more about the stablecoin paper that he co-wrote with a couple of other academics and that got accepted by IEEE. Quite excited about that. Next we'll talk about Ripple's Fortress acquisition, on again, off again, and now off again, and what exactly is going on there. John's got all the deets, and then finally. We'll speak to you a little bit about the New York Post article that alleges that Gemini withdrew a whole bunch of cash from Genesis prior to its implosion. Why that is a problem, not just from the terms of service for Gemini's Earn customers, but also as a matter of law. In common law, there's this thing called equitable tracing. Tell you a little bit more about that towards the end of the show. But without further ado, John's going to tell us a little bit more about stablecoin paper. I'm going to try to keep my stuff together, despite the cold that I have. That's how much I am committed to this podcast for you guys. Right, tell us about the stablecoin paper, John.
So this is a joint work with a business school professor, economics, finance professor, and a computer science professor. So what we were looking at here is what kinds of stablecoins can actually be made to work properly, right? And finding some analogies with regular economics problems in traditional finance that have existed for a long time, and then trying to see how you can connect computer science to those economics problems and sort of model out. I mean, you have a computer, computers can do things people can't. They're faster, they're maybe more reliable, it's more transparent, whatever. But what exactly does that let you do better for stablecoins? And sort of the core result of the paper is the traditional finance solution is something called a pegged currency, of which the Hong Kong dollar is, I think, the most famous example. And that the computer automation doesn't let you do a better job than the Hong Kong dollar in certain ways. So that's a system that doesn't suffer from bank run failures, right? And the Hong Kong dollar has not failed on a bank run. And there is history filled with examples of peg currencies run like that survive panics because the way they're designed, there's sufficient dollars to back them. And adding this sort of automation and transparency does not allow you to be more efficient in the sense that you don't still need one-to-one backing for things.
Yeah,
there is no magic algorithm that fixes the problem.
Okay, so for people who don't understand, who may not necessarily have the context for it, could you give us a little bit of context about the Hong Kong dollar, and why this is till date still one of the most successful pegged currencies, and why does that work?
Right, so the model that they use is not a model invented by Hong Kong. It's a model that's existed for a very, very long time. The Hong Kong dollar has been pegged to the US dollar since 1983 at a rate of something like 7.8 Hong Kong dollars to one US dollar. And the way it works is a part of the Hong Kong government, the the central bank in the Hong Kong, so the equivalent of the Fed, ECB, Bank of England, whatever, they have a huge pile of dollars that is larger than the number of Hong Kong dollars that are outstanding. There are some technical conditions about whether that's deposit accounts, physical cash, money market account, whatever, but the Hong Kong government doesn't have much debt. So generally speaking, it's just demand deposits in banks. And for a bank to create more demand deposits in certain circumstances, that bank has to come up with US dollars from somewhere or get those Hong Kong dollars from somebody else. So the HKMA, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, it's the equivalent of the Fed, has hundreds of billions of US dollars. They are, in some sense, foreign exchange reserves, but they're very, very special purpose foreign exchange reserves. They're there so that if people want to convert their Hong Kong dollars and take the money out of the country, they can do that. The pile is large enough. It's never been a problem. There have been occasional partial panics. 1998, Hong Kong had a bit of a, and yeah, it wasn't, the currency didn't move. It was fine. It all survived. And again, history has many examples of peg currencies that are run like this that work fine. It's not even just Hong Kong right now. The currency in Denmark is pegged to the euro, and the Danish central bank and the European central bank have agreed to provide each other with funds sufficient to maintain that peg. And there are other more minor examples in various parts of the world, but those are sort of large open trading economies that, with freely convertible currencies.
Okay, so TLDR, they just need to make sure that they have more assets to back the Hong Kong dollar than they have Hong Kong dollars in circulation. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, it works the way USDC works. Is sort of the crypto analogy. You need a big pile of dollars, and the finding here is if you have less than a big pile of dollars, there is no way to make that as reliable. And we can come to what this means in a second. In many designs, it's not even possible to quantify how much less reliable you are. So some types of computer science problems are what's called undecidable. It means that there is literally no algorithm to mechanically work out the answer to your question. And a lot of classification of partial reliability of stablecoins, are undecidable problems. So it isn't, if you have some trading strategy that goes out and relies on Uniswap and the unknown preferences of the people you're trading against on Uniswap, it isn't even possible to make firm statements about how reliable that trading strategy is in general, which is, some things in life are, the future is unknown. This is kind of one of those. You can't square this circle in any other way, which is okay. You can have an incentive mechanism. Luna, most famously, was all about people want to buy Luna, contribute more money to the ecosystem, and it can work for a long time, right? It's not a problem. Somebody responded to some tweets about this saying, isn't Tether then just sort of proof that this isn't right because Tether may not have all the dollars? Stuff can work for a while. No one's saying things have to fail quickly. I think what really matters is that this would give the government something like a free pass to say, we will provide licenses to these designs, and you can't innovate your way out of this box, so you can't tell us you're going to be creative and still get a license. And I suspect over time, something like that will be built in.
So would you say that that's kind of like the thrust of the paper that you guys have written, where you're saying that, look, these are the structures that we know will work. Historically, they've been proven to work. And all of these new ideas that some of these crypto bros have come up with, this is why they would not work, and this is why, therefore, they perhaps could be said to be less worthy if you of licensing if you were to have such a thing.
And there is plenty of precedent in the traditional finance world for academic results around impossibility of certain things functioning, influencing public policy in this area. The IMF relies heavily on the theory work that helped design the Hong Kong currency peg. Right? And the types of currency regimes the IMF is okay with are consistent with some of the theory work that we rely on. And there you very much see something that is, in quotes, like a regulator endorsing certain designs and not others. So they won't let you have a massive current account deficit, freely convertible currency, and maintain monetary policy that's totally independent of the. There are cases, you can Google Mundell-Fleming trilemma. The IMF doesn't let people do stuff that's going to explode, or at least won't give them money if they try. Here, I think the equivalent is getting a license. So there is plenty of precedent for academics influencing that sort of policy stuff.
All right.
I would also say that this provides a framework, not just for analyzing stable coins, but for analyzing a lot of different stuff. So
Okay.
I don't know what ideas people want that aren't possible, but we've kind of laid out a roadmap for other people to sit down and tackle if certain DEX designs can be made stable, if certain whatever yield generation protocol, I don't know, come up with this product people want. In many cases, the ideal version is probably impossible, and then you have to compete on your compromises. In some cases, the ideal version is probably possible. The Uniswap works, right? But other things people want probably not possible. So it's a framework that should be somewhat cookie cutter applicable in other areas. This is often how interdisciplinary work goes.
Okay, so
we rely on.
So from your perspective, though, like what would be the main restriction? So like sometimes it's a computing problem, and I know a lot of the crypto guys like people to believe it's a computing problem, but I think from what I know and from what we've read, it's that more often than not, it's an economic problem. It's a game theory issue, and those are not problems that an algorithm can solve necessarily from a computing. Like trying to use a computing solution to try and fix a game theory problem is not going to work. But for some reason, like all the crypto bros have managed to sort of suggest that is a potential solution, and that's why you get these sweeping, blockchain solves that. No, it really doesn't in some cases.
Well, okay, I mean, so financial history is replete with crises. And of course, it's the famous, I think it's a Keynes quote, the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent.
Yeah,
right? So the idea is that a crisis will occur, and then everybody's limit will be tested. Now, you can make an argument that the improved transparency provided by public whatever ledgers might eliminate crises in the future. I can certainly accept that it might make them less frequent. Yeah. I struggle to believe that transparency is the only thing causing economic crises in world history, given the regularity over millennia with which they have occurred. I don't mean that they're on a fixed schedule. I mean that they afflict every style of government, every style of economy, every period in world history. If you honestly believe that the transparency will mean that those crises don't occur anymore, that is an intellectually consistent position. I personally think it's a bit naive, but I guess we're going to find out. Maybe I don't know. I mean, you can't prove that, right? You can't prove you can't prove whether or not transparency eliminates economic crises. All you can do is try and see how long it is until there's a crisis. And I'm not. I mean, if I was personally in charge, I wouldn't be willing to risk the entire world economy on. Oh, let's just flip a transparency switch, mandate it everywhere, and see what happens. Maybe you do it incrementally. Maybe stuff starts to look a bit more reliable for a little while, and people are a bit happier. But yeah, again, we have a solution that is not subject to that problem, so we could also just use that one.
Right? All right. So when will people be able to read this paper if they want to?
Oh no, the link is on the website. The paper is. So Fantastic. The actual journal publishing schedule, I don't know, but it's on the website, so you can read. It is the intro and the conclusion should be accessible to people that have some trading experience and market experience that read the business section of the newspaper. I do not think that the middle of the paper, particularly the stuff that relies on the max flow min cut theorem, is probably not very accessible to people who don't know what the max flow min cut theorem is.
So,
I mean, if you're an academic in economics that does derivative pricing, you'll be able to figure it out pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, given our viewer base, I wouldn't sell them short. I'm pretty sure most of them can figure this out.
There will be people who can follow that, but it's
So what I'll do is we'll make sure that we have the link to John and his colleagues' articles in the description section or in the comment section, and there is a sort of like more accessible version on Blockit, and we'll put the link out there as well. And all these resources are free. Excuse me, and all that. Okay, but let's move on. Moving on, Ripple's acquisition of Fortress, which fell through. So they got to the Fortress, they were past the gates, they didn't like what they saw in the Fortress, and they backed out.
The drawbridge came down, and there was a problem in the treasury. Yeah, that's literally true, right?
That's literally what happened. So, what do you think about that?
Well, there's a bunch of missing money.
We were talking about so context, right? Context. So people don't actually know that Fortress has what is estimated between a $12 to $15 million hole.
Well, the CEO has publicly acknowledged they have at least $12 to $15 million in missing assets.
That they know of. Yeah.
These things is that it's probably higher because look, it never goes down. This is
nothing to do with remind me again, why is this stuff missing?
Oh, I think they just misplaced keys, right? I don't know if it was theft or if it was they lost the keys. I don't recall.
It's the loss
sorry.
of keys. So that
Okay.
bit again, and this goes back to the show we did on Crypto Critics Corner. I mean, the whole point of custody is, God damn it, just hold the damn stuff.
It's just straight up incompetence, right? I mean, that's a bit mean, but like if you're a custody company and you lose the keys to your crypto wallets, I think
this is like the valet, right? You leave your key with the valet, and the valet loses the keys to the car, but the car is still there.
Yeah.
That's not helpful.
I actually had that in a hotel once. It was not a very pleasant experience, but anyway, it was
there
a
you
rental
go.
car, so you care. But
yeah. So okay, so why do you reckon that? Okay, so I mean, it's not as if nobody knew about the fact that this stuff was missing. It's not as if Ripple didn't know that the stuff was missing. So they get up to the line of scrimmage, and then they called an audible and they backed off.
Well, I mean, okay, I guess there are two sort of. Well, I mean, there's three explanations. One of them is Ripple didn't know what was going on, got surprised, and whatever, fine. There are two sort of, I think, reasonable explanations here. One of them is that the losses are higher than expected. Right?
That's what I'm
and
thinking.
And that we're going to find out there's more money missing. The other one is simply that once they looked at the business, they realized that the amount of revenue, earnings, losses, whatever associated with the business just are not justifiable relative to the size of the hole they have to fill. Right?
And this is something this is something we talked about on Cass and Bennett Tomlin's show as well. Custody is not a profitable business. I mean, if you do look at this in traditional finance, it's a matter of basis points.
It's a
need
low
scale.
margin business. It can
that's right.
generate a meaningful number of dollars because of scale.
But you need scale. Yeah. You need scale.
Yeah, and if you lose the keys, you're not going to ever scale.
And if you've lost the keys before, or if you represent an organization that has lost the keys before, I think it would be a struggle. And this is just my view, but I think it might be a struggle to get to scale.
I mean, you're seeing this with USDC now. Actually, this is to touch again on something from the Crypto Critics Corner discussion we had. You know, Circle's size has been dropping, and you've been hearing a lot more discussion about what's happening and people mentioning the Silicon Valley Bank incident, right?
Yeah.
Once these kinds of products lose confidence, custody providers, Circle is a variant of custody provider, right? It's very, very hard to restore that confidence, particularly because the cost of setting up a new custody provider is really, really low, and somebody will just do a fresh one that doesn't have a bad search history, right? Such as it is. Yeah, I mean, Ripple can afford to finance the stuff. I guess they just decided it's not worth it because the size of the hole is either too big relative to revenues, bigger than expected relative to revenues, or we're going to find that it's just a bigger number. It would not be the first time in M&A history that somebody has agreed to buy a troubled company, and then when they looked inside the troubled company, the troubles were much, much, much larger. They vanished, and then the police were called in. That happens in finance, you know, in M&A. I don't mean services. I mean M&A all the time.
I mean, I never fully understood the rationale for Ripple to buy Fortress, so to speak. It's not as if this company has a ton of assets. It's not as if, you know, they're like a major leader in custody as well, or they have some unique custody solution or anything. You know, and they've got a checkered past. I mean, unless you're getting this thing like really dirt cheap, like really talking about cents on the dollar.
I mean, Ripple is a big part of the overall ecosystem. This is not a comment about exactly Ripple's product. Ripple's one of the larger whatever companies. And custody is an essential part of having a functioning financial system, a financial software system, whatever. So I can see them deciding, I don't mean as a public service, but I mean as part of their portfolio of businesses, it makes sense to have that. Essentially, every large bank has some kind of custody business, even if they're not huge in the space. So yeah, you'd expect all the large financial institutions, right, in this space to get involved. You see this in finance where some bank will buy a random equity brokerage in some country that's like an up and coming area so that, you know, that we have one too. That's normal. I'm not surprised by that. Citibank owns all kinds of stuff all over the world. Deutsche Bank, Barclays, you know, they buy them, they sell them, whatever. But this kind of M&A is very common.
All right. Okay. So finally, on the last topic of the day, New York Post article about so this is it's been separately reported. In some places, it's reported as the Winklevii taking the money out of Genesis before Genesis went down. In some places, it's been reported as Gemini taking the money out of Genesis before Genesis went down. Now, for those of you non-bankruptcy lawyers out there, basically, if a creditor which in the case of, let's say, Gemini, they would have stood in the place in the position of a creditor should Genesis have gone down, if they had some kind of knowledge to know that Genesis was already insolvent or something along those lines, and then they had and they're using that sort of information that they had that nobody else had access to. They then tried to get a better security ahead of other creditors. Then that could be subject to in the US it's called something else, but in the rest of the common law systems it's called equitable tracing. I can't remember what it's called in the US, but there's a term for it, and it'll come to me at some stage.
Yeah, that's the English law name. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, the English law name is called equitable tracing. And it's basically it's not fair because you had so like inside information, and you sort of use that advantage to get
fraudulent transfer, preferential conveyance, or whatever.
Something along those lines. That's right. All of this, it's like I can't remember what it is now. Yeah. Okay, right. So,
I mean, it could even be worse than that, because the different versions of the story reporting that they, if they just pulled their own personal money, clearly that's a total disaster. But even if they were pulling customer money to provide like some kind of buffer in case there were liquidity problems later at Genesis, that's also horrible. That's more of like a conspiracy to cover up the problem, as opposed to.
So let's put this in context for
the bankruptcy version of theft, right?
Well, let's put this in context for people who are not familiar. So essentially, from what I understand, Gemini had this thing called Gemini Earn, and then they were basically just pushing the stuff into Genesis, correct?
And they were open about that. The terms of service made clear that you gave them the money and they were some form of intermediary. They're in fact being sued for being an unregistered securities intermediary.
Yes, correct. Because I mean, it's like they're basically acting as like a broker dealer.
Yeah, and the SEC is alleging that they're doing that and suing them for it.
Well, I mean, that's a separate story. This and we're not going to talk about that. So that's what they were supposed to do. Now, the thing a broker is not supposed to do is help you to hedge, or worst case in this situation, to take the money out where it's supposed to be to generate yield. So if Gemini Earn had promised its customers that all it was supposed to do is put that stuff inside Genesis, then that's what it was supposed to do. Now, if you got wind of the fact that Genesis might be insolvent, and then as a precaution, then take out 20% of whatever it had with Genesis as a so-called buffer, so that the withdrawals at Gemini could still go forward as required. I don't know. I'm supposed to be a lawyer, but to me that sounds like a Ponzi scheme.
I mean, yeah, there's some versions of this that are sort of more and less Ponzi scheme-esque than others, right? The most straight-up Ponzi scheme version is, say they had $100 and they withdrew 20 of them from Genesis because they were afraid it had a problem. Yeah. And then their plan was to use those $20 as a buffer, but those $20 earn no yield. That's a straight-up Ponzi scheme. If their plan was to cut the yield they were paying and then use this sort of reserve fund in the middle, and I believe the phrase reserve fund is used in the Bloomberg reporting. Yeah. That's just sort of some kind of conspiracy to cover up a liquidity problem. I'm not saying that's a crime, but it's not a thing a broker's supposed to do. That's not a Ponzi scheme, but it's also bad.
No, and that's the thing. Good like when you use Robinhood, Charles Schwab, Ameritrade, when you buy, let's say you want to buy AMC shares, your broker's not supposed to go like, hey, you're buying way too many AMC shares. That seems a bit risky. I'm gonna buy some options to cover them. He's not supposed to do it. He's just supposed to go out there, get the shares. That's it, done. And if he thinks that AMC is bankrupt, it's not his business. So I thought it was curious that they would do this.
Oh, well, sorry, but in that case, it would be more like hedging against the depository that was their custody provider for your shares or something. But anyway, they're not supposed to take action like that without telling you and being open about it and whatever all this.
Yeah. So I thought it was strange. I mean, the intention may have been good. Maybe. I don't know. I don't see.
It is hard to see, like, even if their hearts were in the right place, it's still a cover-up. Yes. I mean, you can believe that Richard Nixon was trying to do the right thing in Watergate, but it was still a cover-up.
Yes.
I'm not defending Richard Nixon, but you understand what I mean, right? Even if they were trying to do this for the benefit of customers, they still lied to them and covered up a liquidity problem, almost certainly, because those withdrawals are either that or they're, pulling personal money ahead of the customer money, which is much worse. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point you brought up. Was it personal money or was it customer money?
You mean the New York Post version of the story, which appears to be the initial reporting, leans a bit more heavily on it being their personal money. But for people who don't know the New York Post has the most aggressive version of every story that it covers, because that's the New York Post brand. So,
Yeah.
okay, it's like when Ricky Gervais hosts an award show and people are surprised he's offensive. That's the brand. So I don't know that I would take the Post version over the Bloomberg version. I haven't read any of these emails, and none of that's come out yet. This is, however, starting to make more sense to me what's really been going on here.
Yeah.
Because the interactions between the digital currency group as a conglomerate's largest creditor, Gemini, and, whatever, the Winklevoss twins and Barry Silbert, these interactions haven't really made any sense.
Now it's starting to make sense, right?
It turns out, that these guys were a little bit more aware of the trouble and taking action to insulate their customers from the trouble, but not telling their customers about it. And then those actions / cover-ups blew up in their face. Yeah, okay. Now I can see why people are a little bit more resistant to suing each other and discovery and going into insolvency proceedings. That would
that makes sense, because
explain a lot.
Yeah, because and we've been talking about this on the show for quite a bit about like what at least what appears to be Gemini's reluctance to kind of like actively pursue.
They're sandbagging, or the strategy makes no sense. We've been open about the strategy making no sense, and
we've talked
people
about
we
this
know who have intermediary communications with these guys, we've conveyed questions like, this doesn't make any sense, and nothing else. It would help you to do a better job publicly conveying what you're trying to do here. But
and so now it's starting to make a little bit more sense, because the last thing you want to do is drag all this stuff out, have all this stuff come out in discovery, and whether or not it was from the bottom of your heart or you were trying to cover up, what was going on, which I suspect that's probably the case.
I documented where it looked like Silbert pulled some personal funds out of Genesis.
Correct. Yeah,
that family office. If it turned out that at roughly the same time, the Winklevoss, and again, we don't know this is true. This is one version of the reporting in a somewhat tabloidy, but also reasonable
Page 6
newspaper. No, I mean, it's the New York Post is a real newspaper. I mean, they're a little bit punchy sometimes, but it's not. It is real news. If that version of the story is true, then they were also removing personal money ahead of customers, and these guys are in the same, in the same cell, maybe, but in the same cell block, in the same area, certainly of wrongdoing. That's going to be a problem for them, and it would make sense that they are somewhat more aligned in ways that we didn't appreciate if they took similar actions to defend their own holdings over their customers' holdings. Which, again, there are now credible public allegations being made with respect to the Winklevoss. I think I published some documents that just proved that it happened the other way.
Right, there you go. So that's it. That's all we have for the show this week. Thank you as usual for tuning in. And if you've got any questions or any comments, hit us up in the comment section below. We really appreciate what you do other ways. Otherwise, just smash that like and subscribe button. I do apologize if I sound a bit muffled. That's because I'm still suffering from the flu. But thanks for tuning in anyway. We will see you again next week. Hopefully I'll be better by then, and we'll be back in the office studio, and we'll be broadcasting to you from the bunker. So from all of us here at ChatArgos, thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again soon.
Have a good weekend.